We need it. Oxygen is why we breathe.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Small Business Stories. You've got me, Dr. LL, Laurelyn Mears, founder of Steeris, as your host and doing all kinds of things with guests, learning from them. Every single guest we've had on, I have acquired numerous nuggets of value and new knowledge. And I know from the reaction in our listenership, which I'm so grateful for, you're getting a lot of value too. Today's guest is Michelle Pollack. She is the founder of Michelle Pollack Leadership. She works with small businesses, the owners, right? We all think we're doing everything right on paper, but then we're exhausted, right? It's the kind of exhaustion that sleep won't fix because we're leading in ways that don't actually fit who we are and what we need to do in this new era. Her work is focused on helping leaders move from just performing leadership to practicing it in a way that's sustainable, clear, and aligned with their brand and the expectations of their customers. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Laurelyn. Great to be here with you.
Well, let's cue it up, right? Because the whole thing's about how misaligned leadership creates this exhaustion, indecision, the self-doubt. What's going on out there in the world? What are you seeing?
Well, the biggest thing that I see is that there are so many people telling us what we need to do to get to a certain place. And especially for small business owners, the tendency is to kind of follow blindly. When somebody has had the kind of success that you want to have, it's really easy to say, okay, I'm going to jump on that ladder and I'm going to follow the rungs that they followed so that I can get where I want to go. But what happens in the process of doing that is that often we're so focused on where we want to go that we miss where we are and what's actually happening around us and being intentional with where we're putting our time and energy in alliance with what we want our outcomes to be, not what we feel like they should be based on what society has told us or what we think other people are going to think about us, right? So it ends up being a lot of productivity and I'm doing. But are you doing the things that are going to get you the business that you want to have?
Cheers to that. Like I am one of the best bits of advice that I've had, and it sticks with me when I started on this journey with Steeris was Laurelyn, you're going to need to develop a discernment filter as soon as you can, because you're going to be bombarded by so many ideas. Do this, do that. Like it gets in your head, and then you start to doubt yourself. Should I do this? Well, they did that, but that's conflicting advice from this or how this feels. And we get trapped inside our heads, right?
That's right. That's right. Um, well, yes. I mean, the brain is not our friend. Our brains can really screw with us because we think that it's our head and it's telling us what we need to do, and that's the truth. But the fact of the matter is, our brains are wired to keep us alive and safe and secure. And oftentimes that's actually not in accordance with going in the direction we want to go. And so it is about discerning whether or not the thoughts that you're having are actually going to support you in getting what you actually want to get for your life. But that's where people need to start. The biggest thing that I see with people that come to me is I ask everybody the same question when we first start. I ask them if you and I were celebrating a year from today because you had accomplished more than you thought was possible for yourself, for your business, for your life, what would we be celebrating? Most people cannot answer that question. And even, it's funny. I've had podcast hosts that have said to me, "Oh, well, I never thought about that." And that's a really hard question. It's hard because you're thinking about it in your head, but if you actually worked it out with me, right now and you had to give me an answer, it wouldn't be as hard. But all these questions that we think about in terms of our vision and where we want to go, we think about them by ourselves without actually being asked to articulate them out loud and verbally process with somebody else. And so we don't actually do that work to help us know what it is that we truly want for ourselves.
Oh, that's about it. Now, in your public appearances, some other podcasts and some of your
Mhm,
social media presence, you've talked about this concept that I opened with as far as people are performing
mhm,
leadership, right?
mhm,
Rather than practicing it. So,
mhm.
how do we know what performance is versus what practice is?
I think the first clue is that, are you aligned with your values? Is the way you're showing up in the world aligned with who you want to be? Do you constantly worry about what other people are thinking about you when you're leading, when you're showing up? Or do you have ownership because you know that this is aligned with the person that it's important to you to be in the world? That is the first step in discerning between those two things. And if you don't know what your core values are, then it's very hard to be leading from them.
I want to pull on that. So, what is the cost then of that misalignment, right? When someone's leading a way that's not authentic to who they are, what's the cost?
It can show up in multitudes of ways. Often it's a feeling of uh kind of disconnect, of I thought this is what I wanted, but is it really? Um, or it's a feeling of imposter syndrome. Like, I'm gonna get found out that I'm not really capable of this. Sometimes it's a feeling of exhaustion because you're taking so many people's thoughts and opinions into account, trying to figure out which one is the right one. And when you actually are using your values as a compass, it becomes much clearer which is the aligned value. That doesn't always mean that the choices are easier. In fact, sometimes making your choices based on your values is actually harder. But what I have found in my work is that when you are making choices based on your values and the things that are aligned for you and who you want to be in the world, not just what you want to do, but who you want to be, you are able to stand firm in the choices you make, knowing that no matter what happens, even if it doesn't work out the way you wanted it to, you made the choice that was aligned for you.
I'll fess up on that. So when I hear that, I think about, okay, the things I try to do from everything from my work, my business at Steeris to this podcast, everything that I do, I try to keep it aligned with my values because that's what motivates me and I like doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially all this work, right? It's done at great cost without income coming in, but there's benefit and it aligns with my values. But then I think about what the company needs, and some of those values are like, you get a little squishier because the company needs that. So I've gone into that mode of people pleasing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's taken me so long to unfrig it. Right when I've done that on a path, so they got used to me. Oh yes, of course, of course, of course, Susie, of course, Karen, of course, everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go like, wait a minute, this is not what the company needs, not what I need. This is not what I want to be. I'm misaligned. And you start pulling back, and there's massive repercussions when you've gone down that path, right? People pleasing. So, how do we recognize that we're doing this and going, wait a minute, that's not aligned with my values?
Well, I'm curious to hear, it's your company, correct?
Correct.
So tell me, how are your company values different from your personal values?
They're not.
Right. So when you think about what the company needs, are you looking through the lens of values or are you looking through the lens of something different than values? What does needs mean to you?
First of all, I love the fact that you're my podcast guest and you're interviewing me. So let's just put that out there. Secondly, what I'm looking at is revenues, right?
Okay.
Now, At first, it is, and I have taken those revenues on, but eventually fired those customers or walked away because they're just, you just can't sustain it, right? It's not good for anyone.
Hmm.
But I have taken them initially.
And so if you look back on those moments, what I think I'm hearing you say is that you did it for a reason that was not actually for you. It was fully financially based.
Totally.
And so I guess, listen, every situation is different, but I think there are times in a business where you have to make a decision to take something on for financial benefit. And if you're taking it on for financial benefit and it goes completely against your values, I would place bets that it will never work.
Bingo.
So now there might be a not ideal client that you take on, but it doesn't go against your values. It might not be your favorite client. It might not be your favorite work you do, but there's not a values misalignment. That's different. So it is like it's nuanced. It's not black and white. It's not a yes, like yes I do it or no I don't. What it is making sure you're asking yourself the right set of questions and what is the motivation behind why you're doing something? Does it feel in alignment with how you want to show up in the world? That also requires a trust that if you continue to follow those values, that the right revenue stream will come along. If you sit inside of what is best for you and best for the client, because I would venture to say that if there's a values mismatch with a client, it's not what's best for the client. So if you're coming at it from a service-based viewpoint, which is how I think most values aligned business owners operate, they want to be of service in whatever capacity their business is of service. Asking yourself, is choosing this first best for the client? Can I serve this client to the best of my ability? Not just, do I need this money? Because if you believe you can serve the client to the best of the ability, the money will come. But if
Oh,
you
for sure.
know there's a reason that you can't for some reason because there's a mismatch there, I find that people really respect when you say, I don't think I'm the right person for you. I've had people send me other clients when I've said to them, I'm not the right coach for you, but I know somebody who is. Now, that may have been a choice I made because of my values, or it may have been because I genuinely didn't feel like I could serve them in the way I knew somebody else could. But I have found over time, and it's taken me a long time to get there, that doing that ultimately will bring me more than taking on the client because I feel like I need the income in the moment.
So a couple of things in there. So one, in the services I've taken on, I don't take on a client that I can't deliver for.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have taken on clients, like I said, where there is a misalignment of values, and the STIRIS values are TRI, transparency, respect, and integrity. On
Mm-hmm.
my side, the personal side, I also add loyalty. I really value loyalty. Now,
Mm-hmm.
that said, the way that you've queued it up, I also appreciate that you've allowed space and grace out there because I know for a fact I am not the only founder who has taken on business with a customer that they said, "Oh, I know this is likely to go south. I know I can do the thing, but there's some signs there, right?" But we do it anyway. And then we learn and we look back and go, "Oh, never again." Right?
Yep. But I'm curious, you mentioned people pleasing in there. So
Yeah.
were you taking on those clients because you felt that you didn't want to let them down in some way? What was the people pleasing aspect for you?
So that piece comes in because they were referred by somebody else whom I trust, whom I'm
Ah,
aligned with, who there is a deeper connection to. And when they've said, "Oh, da da da, go to Laurelin," well, then of course you have to provide, even though you're thinking, "Duh, duh, 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 duh," right?
Yes.
It's a
So
little nudgy in there.
I'm curious, having learned this, having experienced this, what do you do differently now when somebody comes to you that's a referral, but it feel like it's necessarily going to be a great working experience?
Because I have put in very firm boundaries,
Mhm.
like everybody else by this age, right? I'm not 20 anymore. I'm Gen
Yeah.
X, but I identify as Gen Z. That said, I am not 20 or 25, right? And so gone through a bunch of things, especially on the personal level, that have just ripped me apart. And I'm like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
Nothing is worth that and going
Yeah.
down those holes. So it becomes very clear up front. I'm sorry, this just really isn't going to work out. And same as you say, I do know blah, blah, so and so, or this or that might be a good suggestion for you. Happy to make an
Yeah.
introduction. Would you like me to do?
Yeah.
Right. It's
Great.
just, it's simple. Like I've taken I guess the net is I've taken the emotion out of that part of the people pleasing and
Mhm.
really looked at it in a structured and systematic way, which is anchored in values, systems, process, like can it be delivered, timelines, load, all these things rather than emotional or like, oh, kind of position. Plus, I'm in a different financial position. So I think that
Of
also
course.
allows a little more latitude, right?
The really interesting thing that you said was when you brought up boundaries, I believe that boundaries are directly tied to values. I think
Yes.
that our values allow us to see where boundaries will serve us in protecting those core values. So when you're truly values aligned, it becomes easier to create those boundaries, right? And
Sure.
Melissa Urban, who is the founder of Whole 30, I was going to say Whole 40. I clearly haven't done it, but she wrote the Book of Boundaries. And her definition of boundaries to me is the most accessible, brilliant definition that there is because so many people think of boundaries as like a hard stop and it has to be, it's throwing down. And her definition, and I'm gonna totally, totally slaughter it, but I'm gonna give you the general gist, is that boundaries are, she doesn't say rules or restrictions, but you get the idea that we create to keep ourselves and our relationships safe and healthy.
Yes. Exactly, right? And that's it. Like as I said, respect and integrity, when those are violated as values, there is no safety and it is
Yeah.
not a healthy relationship, right? So we dig out and we move on from there. So
Right.
with that, speaking of moving on, let's bring it back to you, Michelle.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
so when we've got self-doubt, and I appreciate that, like this is what makes it interesting for our
Hmm.
podcast listeners because it's real, it's not all scripted, right? It's planned. On my side, I do research and I make sure I'm prepared to ask my guests intelligent questions or try to move things forward that way, and we schedule it and we get ready for it. But how this conversation plays out, that is unscripted. And I think that adds a lot of value. And the fact that we can go back and forth and that a guest who has expertise in a lane can bring it back and essentially diagnose slash treat slash aid in real time, I think adds a lot of value. So I appreciate it. And I'm hoping our listeners, hey, out there, I hope you got something out of this too.
Great.
So thank you for that. Now, let's get back.
Yeah.
So we've talked about self-doubt in the
Hmm.
past, again, in some of your other conversations that you've
Hmm.
had, and you call it a signal rather than a flaw. So, what are you pointing to when leaders are in that mode of constantly second guessing themselves? What's behind all that?
Well, I think it depends on the situation. So again, I'm very much in the world of gray. There's an element of self-doubt that comes from constantly outsourcing to others, from kind of working from the outside in rather than the inside out. What I mean by that is um and this is particularly prevalent in women because women tend to fall into good student syndrome from the time we're very young. And we are trained to um, please our teachers. We get good grades by doing what the teachers want, but all of the teachers want something different. So we are being trained to get an A by doing what the teacher in history wants, and something different for the teacher in English, and something different for the teacher in French, and something different for the math teacher. Rather than, and so when we go out into the real world, we're looking outside of ourselves for what somebody else is going to be pleased by, what somebody else thinks is good work. And that tends to have us second guess, question ourselves, wonder if we actually know how to do it. So there's that over here. Now, there's another time that self-doubt comes up and that is about, let me go back to that for 1 second and say, that's about learning to work with our brain and the thoughts in our brain. Because as I said earlier, they're not all the truth. And it's learning to recognize where we're telling ourselves stories and creating beliefs that then create our actions in the world that are actually not serving us. And discerning between, okay, what am I making up? And what's actually the fact here? So that's something you can learn. On the other side of things, I believe that when we are actually leveling up in our lives or in our careers, in any aspect, the self-doubt is a signal that you're on the right track. Because when you go after something new, of course you're going to have self-doubt. Of course you're going to wonder, do I know how to do this? And the answer might be a little bit no, but you're going to find the courage to go after it. Anyhow, and so when you're starting something new, when you're starting on a new venture, when you're going after something bigger, that self-doubt to me, that's saying, yes, okay, keep going. That's a signal that you're doing the thing that's hard, that you're being courageous, you're not staying safe, you're going after that next level, and that voice will be louder than it ever has been before when you actually step outside of the comfort zone and you go after it.
As you're saying that, I'm hearing what so many entrepreneurs say or have been told to think and believe and embrace: fake it till you make it, right? There's
Sure.
that piece.
Yeah.
And of course, I hear Coach Susan Joffers, right? Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yep.
And that's really, I think, the essence of entrepreneurship, because everything you're doing is new. If it was all already done, you wouldn't be entrepreneurial about it, right? You'd
Right.
be rinse repeating whatever it is that, that was. And so when I think about also what we're just talking about with values, is it that people leaders that you've coached get
Mhm.
tighter around their values and more anchored, or is it that they learn to strip away the emotional attachment to it that makes them better decision makers?
Oh, what a great question. Um, I think it's a little bit of both. Listen, I think the more you dive into it, it's a multifaceted process. When you were bringing up, uh, feel the fear and do it anyway, I remember where I was when somebody talked about that book with me. I was in my early 20s, and um, I really think that courage, people want confidence. They think they want confidence, but confidence is something that ebbs and flows. Confidence is not something that is with us 24/7 all the time, but courage is. Courage is what gets us confidence. The courage to say, yes, I am terrified of this, but I'm going to try. I'm going to go after it and I'm going to see what happens. And to your point about the emotions, and I'm not going to make myself bad or wrong if the outcome isn't exactly what I'd hope or expected. I'm not a failure. I don't have to be ashamed. And I liken those things to being like a scientist and having a science experiment. Because when a scientist is doing an experiment, they're not attaching emotion to the outcome, they're attaching data. And so if we can look at these things like experiments and be able to say, okay, this worked, this didn't, I'm going to strip this away, but I'm going to bring this forward and I'm going to iterate and do it again next time. Because what happens when we get emotional about it is often we throw the whole thing out and we start over, and that's where it takes us way longer than it needs to. But when we're able to really take a deep breath and be stay in a neutral frame of mind, then we can actually see, okay, what's the next thing I'm going to try to get closer than I got this time? Imagine if scientists had given up on cancer research because they haven't had success.
Right. No, perish the thought, right? As a
Right.
cancer survivor and as a PhD scientist who has
Okay.
toiled at the lab bench for an ungodly number of years, failed, I couldn't even count them, the number of times. But then you learn that through that discipline, that data and logic that, okay, this is what happened and this is why it happened. And learning to just be less emotional about the outcome. So recently we did this big bid. FedEx delivered it 44 minutes late. Therefore, the bid was rejected, right? Because we missed the deadline. Again, through circumstances really beyond their control. FedEx had a few days, didn't happen. Okay, there we go. And one of my business partners was like, oh my God, like, aren't you bawling? Like, how can you deal? And I'm like, you know, we look at this and we think, all right, what are we not going to do next time?
Yeah.
Because what's done is done and cannot be undone, right? Is
Mhm.
what I like to think. It was an ungodly cost. And I'm thinking, thank God I had that 25% coupon because it was only $345, right?
Right.
And if I'd had 25%, well, it would have been almost like $480. So I saved some money on it. So you try to look at these things. Anyway, so you can go through that and I think keep going. But at some point, if you just keep pushing through a misalignment and you're just that trudging, you're going to realize that your business is no longer sustainable. And what signs do you see from the leaders that you coach when they're approaching that level of tension and misalignment and potential for failure?
Well, you know, I think to your point, there's generally, I mean, there's so many different facets of the question that you just asked. So let me first speak to the misalignment. Um, I think there always has to be space for us to be asking ourselves, am I still moving in the right direction? Am I still going? Is this direction still the direction that I want to be going in? Is the person who I am now still aligned with that? Because if you started your business 6 years ago, you have learned and grown so much along the way. And so that question of misalignment, first we look there. And I find that failure failure to me is not a scary word or a scary thing. Like if you're going to be a business owner, you're going to fail. And you should just accept that at the outset. Now, that's really easy for me to sit here and say on a podcast and then talk to me when something fails in my business. I have emotions about it. And this is the thing about the emotions that I think is really important. Somebody, a amazing woman named Samara Bay, who wrote this incredible book called Permission to Speak. She and I were having this conversation, and I can't remember where she said she heard this, but like it was a mic drop for me. There's a difference between emotions and feelings. Emotions are something that's somatic. They happen in us. They're not meant to be controlled or not had. They are an indicator of something. But the feelings are the stories that we make up about the emotions. And that's where we get reactive in our lives. So if we can give ourselves permission to have the emotion, usually the emotion is just pointing to something we want. There's just a desire there, whether it's frustration or envy or sadness or anger. There is a desire underneath that for something. And if we can look at that, it actually points us in the right direction. But when we start to create a story about it because we hate feeling that emotion so much, then that's where we tend to go off the rails. So that's where I tend to look with the people that I work with when it starts to get into a little bit of the messiness and the whatever those challenging emotions are. But here's the really interesting thing is that I find a lot of the people I work with, they want to avoid those emotions. They've spent their entire lives trying to avoid those emotions. I mean, I am also Gen X, and we lived in a time where, like, you want to be happy and joyful, right? Like, don't, you're okay when we fell down, as opposed to when my kids were little, they're not little anymore, but when my kids were little, I would say, I was taught to say to them, are you okay? And I didn't go, but I also didn't tell them that they were okay if they were crying, right? So there was permission to have that feeling, but we didn't have that. And so for so many of my clients, part of what I work through with them is the anxiety that comes up around the fear of the feeling that might happen if the failure comes. Did you follow what I just
Yeah,
said?
yeah, there's a lot of things that have to happen. That's quite the ripple effect until you ultimately get to the place where you go exploding head emoji and go, ah,
Yes.
right?
But when they actually give themselves permission, like it's okay to feel sad and to be in that for a minute, the anxiety doesn't come and they get through the whole process so much faster than they do when they're doing everything they can to avoid the potential of that emotion. So, I mean, I just threw out a lot of different things, but that's the thing. It's all a part of it. And for different people, some people don't have second guessing. Some people don't have imposter syndrome. Some people don't have problems feeling their emotions. Some people don't know exactly what their values are, right? But they can't read the label from inside the jar. So they don't know how to get from where they are to where they want to be because they can't see it for themselves. It's very particular to each individual client where we're going with the work we're going. But all of these things we've mentioned are a part of I pull in and grab and choose from my bag of tricks depending on what the person is dealing with.
So you said a lot in that. Let's chunk it down for our
Okay.
listeners who need the TLDR, I'm distracted, I'm driving, people are cutting me off, and all these sorts of things, right? Or wherever they're listening to their podcast. Number one, as a leader, you're feeling this exhaustion. What is that number one question you should ask yourself?
When you're feeling that exhaustion, the number one question I start with is, what do I really want right now? What do I really want? And what do I need? Are they the same? And sometimes what you want is more important, and sometimes what you need is more important. But looking at both of those things to ask, what's underneath this that what's exhausting me? What is the thing that I'm going for that I'm not getting?
And are you saying that it's okay to have an ugly cry in the shower, Michelle? Are we allowed to do
I
that?
for sure am saying that. Yes. Yes, 100%. Yeah, well, yeah. Also, by the way, the number one thing really I'd say when you're exhausted is let yourself stop working for a second so you can take a second to like be a human being.
Yeah.
We push through that exhaustion so much of the time. So forget everything I said. But actually give yourself permission to take a beat.
Oh, yeah. I got to that place after COVID the fifth time a month or so ago, worked through that, this big bid, couple other bit, and I'm just like, I can't. Like, I can't do
Yeah.
this. Right. And
Yeah.
you need to take that space. It wasn't a big break, but it was a break. And it just helped enormously because I knew I wasn't whole and you're not in a good place. And if you can't be there, how can you be there for anybody, your family, your clients, your business? You just can't. Right. So
That's
take
right.
that pause. So, Michelle, where can people get a hold of you, find you online? Where do we look?
My website is the best place to find me. It's michellepollack.com. And there's a few different interesting resources that you can find on there. I have a leadership assessment. I have a guide to say no, well, because so many people say yes when they really want to say no. And I've got some great articles in my blog. So that's probably the best place to connect with me and also on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Now, our last question, signature
Yes.
question of the
Yes.
show. So, if we got to look in that closet of yours and there was some footwear that represented you, Michelle Pollack, what
Uh-huh.
are we looking at and why are those shoes, boots, whatever they are, just so you?
Um, I have a pair of shoes that they might be considered vintage now. But they are red, like a red strappy heel. Um, and they are the shoes that when I first started doing this work, when I put them on, I was able to have that ownership that we talked about at the beginning of our conversation. They kind of helped me to step into my full self. And so that's my answer to that question.
Much like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, right?
Yep,
There's no place like home. Click, 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 right? A few times.
exactly.
All right, Michelle, with that, it's a wrap. Thank you so much for being on our show today, and we wish you continued success with your business and helping leaders get aligned with their values and doing what they're supposed to do. Thank you,
Th-
Michelle.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And how about that fantastic intro by Touch Circle?